like I mentioned before, like this is a pretty casual thing. It's mostly just me catching up with people that I haven't seen in forever because like everybody took the last year off for some weird reason.
Secret global reason.
Yeah. But how you doing, man?
I'm good. How have you been?
I'm also been doing well, all things considered, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the pandemic sucked, but
Yeah.
it's nice being able to like see my family more. And I don't
Yeah.
know. There were some benefits to it, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of been the same with me. Like, it's like I didn't mean to take a year off of like going to conventions and stuff, but other than just like not being around comic books, it really didn't actually bother me that much. It was just
no.
saved money,
Yeah.
just worked and it was a weird year for me because I also got married and bought a house.
Oh, I didn't know you
So
got married.
yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. So it was just like a weird thing where it's like I know a lot of people are out there not having a great year, but like my year's been pretty okay, all things
Yeah.
considered, you know.
Yeah. When I kind of like have pulled out of social media, so it's just nice. I don't know. Like there's some expectation we have as creators where it's like I
Mm,
have to always be engaged with people and I have to always be sharing stuff. And I'm like, it's exhausting. And I'm
yeah,
like, I don't have interesting things to say all day long. Like,
yeah,
and when I do have some thought that I might be interesting, I'm not thinking like I better get to Twitter and post it. I'm just like, nah, I'll just sit on this one. Like it's fine.
yeah. And I'm kind of the same way. Um, I this has actually been a regular topic of the past couple of episodes because people I've talked to, um, social media kind of seems to be like a thorn in everybody's side, but it's also such a valuable tool that
It
there's,
is.
you
It's
know,
incredibly valuable.
yeah,
Yeah. Because like, it's something where, especially I've noticed the most from not using Facebook is that I had the most engagement there. So
mm-hmm,
people had an idea of what I was like art wise, what I was doing and like projects I'm working on. And now people are like, oh, I just thought you just stopped making art. I'm like, no,
no,
I'd probably make more art now. I just don't, I'm not sharing it all the time. It's like,
yeah. I kind of have the same thing where I definitely know I'm more productive in the stuff I really want to do when I
yeah,
don't feel this obligation to constantly be online in some capacity.
yeah,
And that was another, like, just going back to this is all probably just going to stay in for the podcast, but
that's cool.
that's
Yeah.
like the reason I started this was because like I need to have, it's like you read like, published author gives you the 5 hot tips for building your audience, and it's all like the first thing you do is create a popular podcast and have so that way you can always be in contact with your legion of followers on Twitter. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have any of that. Like
No.
it's like a lot of these like rules for success is step one, go to your 10,000 Twitter followers. And I'm like, wait, I got to get the 10,000 Twitter followers first before
Oh, I
and
know.
it's so annoying. So I'm being a little facetious with that description, but I don't think it's too far off. Uh,
No.
but that was part of the reason I did this. Then it's just something to do. It's something I can put online and hopefully facilitate, not just engagement, but just discussion about art and creative process and just whatever. And it's also an excuse for me, like I said, to talk to people. And it's about the only thing I can stand to do that doesn't just feel like hacky or like a chore.
That's what I'll see. Like, and I'm not dogging on people that do it because I understand like it is
Mm,
the hustle of having to do social media, but I'm like,
right.
I'll see an artist or a creator I like, and I'm like following this Twitter thread, and I'm like, why are they posting this? And like, it
Yeah.
just seems like it should. I mean, is it purely for engagement, which is great? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a great brand awareness thing, but I'm like, I just don't like it. I'm like,
I,
I don't,
yeah.
I'm like, I don't really care. I care that people would accept my art. That affirmation is always a big part for an artist, but like,
Hmm.
it's like I'm making the stuff I want to make, and that's really all I care about. So, it's if I had 1 million followers, I'm sure I would be happier, but I
Mhm.
don't think my happiness right now is like plateaued or something like that, where it's, in some weird valley where I'm just like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. The advice I'm always given to people and other people when I talk about struggling to find success or be happy with their art or their whatever they're doing is, for me, I always just have to put the horse blinders on and just
Yeah.
not pay attention to what other people are doing and just really focus on the thing that I am doing and just get it done.
Yeah.
And nothing brings me more satisfaction than just finishing something and being done with it and then starting something new.
Yeah.
You know?
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like a weird, I don't know if it's like a completionist thing where, it's just checking off the boxes is a great thing. But that's what, artists, creators in general always struggle with that feeling, that kind of, and I know sometimes people say it's imposter syndrome, which sure, that's fine. But like I'm the same way where we're all critical of ourselves.
Right.
You at the end of the day, it's like, do I want to be hypercritical of myself? Like I'm in my head all day long. I'm like, I need to just let those feelings go and just focus on just progress is more important than your art being perfect or whatever the alkalites you need for followers and all that crap. So but
yeah, and I think that's the like the key to improving is just the constantly doing it, just do it over and over again, just keep working. That's the old saying, like for artists especially, the 10,000 page or 100,000 pages thing, like you need to do that many pages of art before you're even anywhere near what you want to be. You can't just like sit down and expect it to start great, except for those few people that are like that, and we all hate them.
There are
some people that are just naturals, but
that makes sense. Like some people they just are intuitively good carpenters, like we all have skill sets that just for some reason click. That there are going to be those outliers who just like fall into something and just excel. But for most people in any skill, you have to work and like get better. And artists especially, like I think all artists do it. I'm sure writers do too, where you think you're pretty hot stuff. And then like you look back at your stuff from a year ago and you're like, man, like why was I confident about this at all? But that's a good thing, that's showing that you're making progress. But that's something where I get more excited about it, where like I'm constantly challenging myself to like stop sticking to the same poses or compositions, like always try to do something new and make it hard. So then future Chris will be like, that dude sucked, but he put the effort in. I'll look back and be happy.
Yeah, I definitely have the same thing where I think it's a creative, like people, an artist type of a thing where there's like the two sides of the coin where you're extremely confident in your abilities, but you also just hate everything that you do, and so there's this weird thing where it's like, I know I'm not good enough, but also I know that I am. And it's like a constant like tug of war in your head of, like which one's going to come out on top. I don't know. But I think the key to that is just repetition and just constantly moving forward and just keep working,
I think you do get some personal affirmation by like, I'll know when I feel like I've successfully executed something. Like if I feel like my craftsmanship was where I wanted to be, if I hit the ideas I wanted, like I will have that feeling of like I succeeded. But that to me, it's different now where I don't feel like this is better art than somebody else's, regardless of fidelity and all that kind of crap. Maybe it is, but I feel like I achieved what I wanted to achieve. Like I got closer to what I wanted. And to me, that's success versus just like, see some really super cool drawing and you're like, that's just better than someone who does stick figures. And it's like, sure. Like, technically it is, but it's like, maybe that guy at the stick figures, that's exactly what he wanted. He executed perfectly. He got what he wanted out of his drawing. So I'm like, it's hard to compare.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I get that. Well, I did want to talk a little bit about your history as an artist and getting into comics, because I believe, I guess I haven't officially introduced you. I'm still learning the ropes of this whole podcast thing, but I am talking to Kristofor Harris, comic book, indie comic book artist. Is that a fair label?
Yeah.
We met, I think, in 2015 at Planet
Yeah.
Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the year that you were sitting next to Ed Bickford?
Yeah, that's the
so.
first year I decided I wanted to be like a proper artist and like make comic books.
Well, because I wanted to talk about that. Like, what really like made you like take that leap, that jump to like you like decided you wanted to do this and get into art? Have you always like been in like doing art your whole life?
Yeah, like I've always been an artist, and like I never really took it too seriously. Like I just kind of doodled what I wanted to draw. I used to suffer. I don't know if I suffer from it. I kind of like it now, but I used to have these like really intense nightmares growing up. And I was told that the best way to cope with them was to draw them. Just to kind of like, instead of just like running from your fear, to just like be in that moment for a little bit and then just learn to like teach yourself to like work past it. So I started drawing these just awful images. And it was fun because
literal nightmares. That's what you started drawing.
Yeah. So, I've always struggled with like religion, and I've just never really had a very like strong like feeling for or against it. I've just kind of just been in the middle of it, where I'm more interested by the creation and like the support of it. And so a lot of my dreams, when the nightmares I had, would be these very like religious themed, just spooky, beautiful creations. And I just drew me in, where it was hard to be scared by it because I was just like so overwhelmed. Like I was just like in reverence of these images. And so I just was like, I'm going to just start doodling them. So like, if you I actually found a stack of my old drawings not long ago. They're all really weird, like these like angels and like fighting these weird like nature monsters and people like being just shredded and things like that. So I don't know what it was in my upbringing that caused that, but I love it. So it's something that's carried over. It's carried over more and more now. Like I think most people probably are starting to see that in my art, but it was more of just kind of exercising these feelings and these thoughts I had. And I decided to take it more seriously. I had a friend that killed himself a long time ago, but I used to talk about, I was like, man, I want to make a comic book. And he would always just say, he's like, yeah, just make one. And I said all the time, I'm like, dude, I'd love to make comics. He's like, then just do it. Like he was very like black and white. He was like, you're not saying you want to paint a mural on the side of a skyscraper.
Right.
You want to make a comic book. He's like, and not that it's easy, but you can just do it.
Yeah.
So I decided one day, I was just like, you know what? I'm like, I'm just going to make it. And that's exactly what I did. And so I kind of made that book and I took it to Planet Comic-Con, and I was like, I'm sure people are going to love it. And I did it in a weird format, which I thought was cool and novel at the time, but it wasn't. And so I went from there and then just kind of kept going.
What was the first thing that you did? The first book?
It's called Limbo. I think
Okay.
I still have copies of it. So
I don't remember seeing it. So if you had it, I apologize.
I sold a ton of them at that. I think I sold like 70 some issues at Planet Comic-Con.
Wow, really? 70?
Yeah, which I was like, that did not help my ego. So I was like, dude, this is it. Like I broke it in. And,
yeah, you're official.
Yeah. And I remember showing the book to, I think it was either Kyle Strom or somebody. And they looked at it, and the first question they asked me was, did you use references to draw this? I'm like, nah, this is all from the noggin.
Yeah.
Like, is that a good thing?
Yeah, they were like, yeah, I can tell.
Yeah, my brain was like, oh, I see. He was being kind. He was saying like I should use reference. But
yeah,
the book I'm still working on. I mean, I'm working on, I guess, issue 2 technically now. It's kind of morphed into a different project that I wanted to do, but it's about this father who his family is brutally murdered, and he ends up going to the afterlife, and he tries to find answers is the best way to describe it. So
that sounds right in line with what you were saying about nightmares, and sounds like it was born right out of that.
Yeah, if you read through the book, I mean, I don't know, it's just brutal. Like his daughter and brother get like just torn apart by some like demonic being, and it's just a lot. But it's definitely like a new artist kind of like, let's be super gory and hardcore, where that's not always necessary, you know.
Yeah.
But
I've definitely noticed like a little bit of a horror aesthetic in your art. I mean, I've seen some pieces that you've done which are very overtly horror-ish, and then other stuff that's not. But I definitely pick it up, just like in I don't know, just the aesthetic, some of your figures and whatnot. Are you a big fan of like horror as a genre, or is that just
as a genre? I love it. I love horror movies and thrillers, and it's one of my favorite genre of movies. But and I mean, even like prose and books and stuff, or I like those too. But I don't know why. I mean, I like other genres more, certainly, but there's something to me about, I like fear. Like I love that our brains, when we're, you know, are stimulated to be scared, that our brains are really good at like trying to break it down and help us like understand it in our own way to like overcome it. And I think that's like insane, because like, especially like, you know, like if you read like the Bible and they talk about angels, they sound like the scariest thing in the entire world. But through modern depiction, they look like these beautiful, like just pretty blonde hair, blue-eyed things. Like no, like they were like, they had 70 eyes, right? And they had like a light that pierced your soul, and they had like multiple wings, and it's like, that is scary. And
that's so like there are memes that go around about that, where it's like angels in the Bible, and then it's like a Lovecraftian figure, and then, you know, angels in the Catholic Church nowadays, and it's like a little Valentine's Day Cupid, you know.
It makes no sense. And so like there's something about that, like I love the idea of, just because we always attribute beauty to being like to goodness, and that's not true. And like some of the most pretty things in the world are scary. So I think that's what draws me to it, where I love this idea of like they're not mutually exclusive, this like fear and beauty. They can,
well, that was Lucifer, the character. I don't mean to be insulting, but you know, Lucifer, Morningstar, like that was his thing. He was supposed to be very beautiful. I forget where that description comes from. I think it might be one of the interpretations of his name, or one of his names, but like that was, that's definitely an aspect of that character, was that he was like a beautiful angel.
And it doesn't help, like our modern depiction of him too. Society has taken it where Lucifer means demon, when it doesn't. Lucifer, I think in Hebrew, it just means adversary. So it doesn't mean that he's this awful looking creature. Like he could just be like a handsome fella that just is not on the same plan with God. So
yeah, no, that's interesting. So so that was, you did that in 2015. It's, you know, it's still weird to me. I think I've said this to you on social media at some point in the last several years, but it's so weird to me now that we are like 6 years past 2015. Like it still feels like it was just like, I don't know what it was about that year, because that was like, it was a few years for me into doing cons, and it just felt like this is the way things should be. And then it's like, here we are 6 years later, and I still feel like it's just not that far away. Like it was just 2015 was just a few years ago. And it's like, oh, 6 years, a lot can change in 6 years, you know.
It's that newness where like, you know, everything's exciting, and you know, something like that. There's
that thing, your perception, it's sort of like tied to that moment, sort of how people get tied to their high school years, and you think like high school was not that long ago, and then you're like, oh, high school was 20 years ago. Oh, you know,
that's the most deflating feeling too, where you're like,
but there is something about that year for me, 2015, which just it felt like a year full of promise, and you know, everything was going to keep going up. And this is I'm not even making social commentary here. Like I'm not even talking about anything on the political spectrum or the entertainment. I'm just saying on a personal life. And so it's just strange to think that, so long ago. But one thing I do want to say, and this is something that, again, I'm pretty sure I've said this to you before, but I've definitely said this about you to other people. and I think I've heard other people say it too, is that your artistic improvement has been just like a huge graph line upwards. And it's one of those things, I don't mean it to sound like a backhanded compliment, but like you could tell,
I
like,
think it is a compliment.
I think you have improved at such a rapid rate. It's very impressive. Like, because I know in 2015, or when you were doing early stuff, I'd seen some of your early work, and I liked it a lot, actually. I thought it had a lot of character, but it was definitely like what you were saying, whichever professional told you, there was a roughness to it that definitely. Like, I thought it was charming because I like rough stuff, like, punk rock, I like DIY rough stuff. Right. So I thought it was charming, but you could see the roughness to it. But again, even though it feels like it was so long ago, in another way, it really hasn't been that long. And I think that the stuff you've done most recently is just incredible. It almost doesn't feel like it's by the same artist.
I get that a lot, where somebody that has been following me for a while, and they're just like, so are you just like the writer for this project? I'm like, no, I'm doing both. Like, it's my art too. I think it's just, my big thing is that I look at art as like, it truly is a trade or a skill. It's something that certainly some people have a propensity to just be good at it, but for most of us, we have to work at it. So I feel like if you really look at yourself and you're honest with yourself and say, like, I really struggled with perspective, and I said, that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just spend the next year, I'm going to draw the hardest things I can think of that I want to do, and it's going to suck, and it's probably not going to be very good, but I will learn. Like, I will get over that hump. And so when I start getting to those places that I'm afraid of going to, where I feel like I'm not good at it, I just embrace it. I'm like, I'm just going to do this, and then maybe I'll never draw some crazy perspective shot again, or I'll love it like I do now. Like, I love drawing these weird perspective things. So like, yeah, it's something that I kind of gravitate towards creators that are in the same mind, where, the stuff you make today can be good, and you can be happy with it, but just your focus should be just getting better. Like, you should just look at, seeing where you want to be in 10 years versus just patting yourself on the back. But
right.
I love when people say that. I'm like, well, that just means all this hard work's paying off.
I think it is, dude. Like, I'd really like the work that you've done. I think it's really good. What have you been working on lately? I haven't really followed all the books that you've been putting out. I know you've done some other, I think the last thing I actually saw was you were doing the is it Charlie? Is that how it's pronounced?
Charlie,
about like the Western robot kind of thing. Yeah. I have the first issue right here.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, I believe I backed the Kickstarter for this, or alternately, no, I don't think I bought it from you because it's signed by Fines, who one of the writer on the book. So I must have got it from the Kickstarter.
It could have been, because I don't think I signed any of those, which they were going to like mail them to me. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. I don't think it doesn't have your signature. It has two signatures. And that's the two writers. Fines Massey and Chris Burgess. Yeah. Okay. So I have signatures from, so I'll have, next time you're at a con, I'll bring this and get you to sign it.
So I've made a couple issues of that. We've slowly been working on, they've written the like third and fourth issue. I just haven't had time to draw it, but it is, I want to, because the amount of progress I've made from the second issue to now, it would just be cool to show people like the world that I saw originally, and like the way I wanted it to look. And I can do that now, which is just, now I just have to have time to do it. But I've done a lot of shorter projects. So me and Matthew Mitchell worked on, he's a really fabulous writer from Kansas City, but we did a short for Unearth, a comic by Colin Bunn, Kyle Strom, and Baltimore Rivas is the artist.
Oh, cool.
A short in the issue 10 of that, which is really cool. It was just like a short little 4-page thing. And then him and I have created this anthology that we haven't released yet. That it's just going to be 4 now. It's just him and I have been working on it. It's just like short stories, really. Like, I've been sharing snippets from the book on Instagram, but it's called the Cadaver Synod. It's about Pope Stephen the 4th or 6th, and Pope Formosus. Just really weird Catholic true story thing.
Oh, that's cool.
But longer books. Oh, what else? I've worked on too many. I've worked on a lot right now. I'm working on this short story based off of the Gnostic Book of Enoch.
Oh, I've read the Book of Enoch. It's fascinating.
It's one of my favorite books. It's really interesting, but it's my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's awesome. And that again, that just sounds right up your alley with those stuff you were saying.
But I think people are going to enjoy it. But really after that, I kind of want to just but I have this Ancient Cosmonauts personal project that I've been making forever, for like the past 3 years. But I stop when I get to like a paying gig, and then I go back to it. And then I have been getting shorter windows in between those time frames. So it's been tough to work on it, but I'm thinking about just working on that for the rest of the year, and then just getting it all done. And then at least I can go back and do whatever I want after that. So, because fortunately or unfortunately, I have a day job. So art is my.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like balancing that work, art life is not fun.
No, it's impossible.
Yeah.
But that's it's fun though. I enjoy it. Like I'm not complaining.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool, man. Oh.
Speaking of personal life.
Yeah. Hi. So do you ever struggle to like balance family time and the day job and art? I mean, I imagine the answer is yes, but I think everybody does.
I struggled more before I changed jobs in the past couple of years, and I had a more chaotic schedule. So I worked just all the time, and I work a lot now, but it was hard to have any balance at all. It just felt like I worked, like that's all it felt like. So now I have my schedule's really set. I have off nights and weekends, so I can, get home from work, we hang out, then I can spend a few hours every day doing art. And on the weekends, I pretty much spend a good portion of that doing art. So it's a good balance now, but it's difficult because sometimes I envy those people that can just like work on art 8 hours a day. Right. But then I'm like, I have great benefits. I make a good amount of money. Like I have a lot of the parts that I'm sure artists that work 8 hours a day are envious of. So,
absolutely.
I'm like, so
it's a tricky thing. And again, that's another thing that I'm always telling people. It's really about finding what works for you. There's a lot of people out there that are going to tell you, this is what you need to do. This is how you become successful. And I really think it's more about like you have to internalize it and make it personal. Like it's like, what do I want out of this? And what am I going to get out of this? And how can I make it work for what I want? Because I am always shocked at the amount, and this won't surprise a lot of people coming out of the mouth of a comic book writer, but I'm always surprised at the amount of artists that are out there not making comics. And they're just sitting around saying like, well, if I could do this for a living, if only, somebody was paying me to do it. And I'm sympathetic to that, because there's a lot of things that I could do if somebody was paying me to do it. But like, at the same time, it's like, if you have the ability and you have the skill, like just do it. And that's the phrase about writing, about writers, is writers write. You're either writing or you're not, whether or not you're getting paid to do it, whether or not you're a professional, you're either writing or you're not. It's really as simple as that. And so I think that's and I mean, I understand it. That's like a struggle with creative people, because it's always hard to like finding motivation, or, it's really easy to get embittered. Cause like, I've even fallen into that before too, where I'm just like, you know what? Sometimes I just want to play a video game or watch a movie and not feel like this time would be better spent trying to work toward this goal or career dream job. And it's like, you need to just find what works for you. And that's why for me, it's devoting myself to the art, or the skill, and just, if I can be happy with what I create, that's that really is the most satisfying thing.
That's where I'm at. Cause I feel like, I don't know if it's a linear process for creators where we feel like we have an idea and maybe an aspiration in the beginning, and then that starts morphing into a competition. And it's not necessarily with yourself, it's with everyone. And you're going to lose that competition because most people are not thinking about what you're doing. They're focused on themselves. They're focused on what their plans and aspirations are. And then I think you kind of realize like for me, I struggled where like artists compare each other because it's easy to. I can draw, like if I draw a commission of like an Akira thing, I can look up a billion of them online.
Right.
Try to like start figuring out where yours fits on that scale of how good it is. But I'm like, if you just internalize that to being like, do you like it? Like, what do you feel proud of the work you did? That's that's what matters. And so that's kind of where I got where like if I'm not making art, I feel like I'm wasting my life. Like I feel like, what am I doing? Like I could be doodling or I could be doing something right now. But then I'm like, but I really want to play Valheim. Like, I've played it for an hour and 30 minutes. Like that's all I played it. And I'm like, I just want to play it for like 1 hour and I don't want to like guilt myself about it. So like, it's kind of like, you just got to remember, like, don't stress yourself out. Like do what you can do.
It's a hard place to get to. I think it doesn't sound like it should be hard because it's really easy to just say, don't worry about it. Don't stress about things. But it's not quite so easy because like you get into your own head and all these a million different things that you're thinking about. And that's why I always fall back to the blinders thing. You know what?
All do.
Yeah. Just focus on the stuff. And that's where true satisfaction will come from.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So like I know you've done a handful of work for hire stuff. Comparing that to like your own creator, like your own personal stuff, do you struggle to like find motivation to work on any of the work for hire stuff? Like, is it easier? Is it, well, I guess a better way to phrase that question, is it easier for you to just like sit down and draw something that somebody tells you, like, here's what I want drawn, versus like coming up with your own story, like being your own writer?
It depends. So like for the most part, I like the challenge. I personally like writing and drawing my own stories, but I love working with writers because I know my cheats. Like I know the way I can cut corners for storytelling that most people won't notice. But when you're working with somebody else, you can't do that. Like you can't say I'm going to cheat on this page because no one's going to know but me. That's not how it works. So I like the challenge of working with other artists, but I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but I like trying to be on the same brainwave, like as, if the writer I'm working with, like I want to meet their expectation, but not in the most like on the nose way. So I want to find a way of maybe surpassing or like, kind of circling around their idea. It still is demonstrating it, but, maybe just through my own context too. But working on my own stuff though, it's easier to procrastinate because I think that, if you see the whole story in your head, it's easy to kind of just dawdle. When I'm working with somebody else, it's not like that. I have a deadline. It's a little more strict. Like it's good having that structure, but I don't mind either way. Like I'm really choosy about the projects I do too. So I won't, because I don't need to do it for the money. So I don't struggle with just picking up any kind of job. If I think the story sounds stupid, I won't tell somebody that, but I might just say, hey, I'm not interested in drawing this kind of stuff. Like I'm more interested in this kind of stuff. If you ever have a story like this, I'm sure it's a really silly minority kind of like small idea, but I would love that. But like, you're not going to like, you'll probably never see me wanting to draw like some big superhero story thing. Like that's just doesn't do it for me. There's so many capable artists out there that I wish them to make their big team of artist books, and I love them, but that's not the stuff I like to draw. So like I rarely will do those kind of things. But
that's an interesting point that you made about having the day job. It sort of frees you up in the stuff you want to do, which I think that's a way that a lot of people don't look at it and they don't understand it. They think of the day job as holding them back because they could spend more time. That's definitely how I think about it. Like if I wasn't spending 40 hours a week at this job, just think of what I could accomplish. But I mean, in the specific circumstance of an artist who's, again, going back to the thing of, if you're just doing it for the art and you're finding satisfaction in the art, that does sort of free you up from needing to take on work that you find no satisfaction in, or just something you don't want to do. And I guess there is a lot of value in that, and there is some power in that too.
Yeah. Because, I look at it where I know for a fact that if I did art full time, I would make more art. I mean, that just like you would, that's just how it works out. But I always, in the beginning, I thought maybe that would make me happier, but then I realized, like, just listening to artists, I'm like, a lot of the things that they're upset about, they don't have, I'm like, I take for granted, where it's a part of my job that I have. And I'm like, if I want off work, I just say, I'm not coming into work today. Like if I did art full time, I would never take off work. I would never have vacation. So not saying all artists are like that or anything like that, but I just know me personally.
No, it is a struggle, because I've seen I know a few artists who have trouble saying no to projects, because that's the when you're when you're a freelancer, it's like you never know where the money's coming from, or you never know when it's going to come. So it's like you have to sort of be this like a squirrel pack rat of just like constantly saying yes and constantly overloading yourself with work, because you never know when that drought is going to come.
Right.
And that's, I mean, some people can make that work, but I've definitely seen some people get like really burnt out on that, because they say yes to every project that comes their way, and now they're not able to get anything done because they're overwhelmed by projects. And now they got people mad at them because they're not hitting their deadlines, and it gets back to that whole work-life balance. You need to,
when it's like writers and artists, like every single writer and artist has a personal project they would love to do. I guarantee it. I doubt there might be one out there, like a artist who's just like, I only want to make other people's things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I mean, people aspire to draw Batman, and there's not a lot of like artists out there that are writing that story that goes with it. Most of the time and that's fine. I think that's totally cool. But those people in that circumstance are a completely different level than I will ever be at. So I'm at peace with knowing that, like, I can make the stuff I want to make at a smaller scale, and I'm probably equally as happy as those people. Like, yeah, it'd be great drawing Batman like that. Who would not want to do, or writing Batman?
It's the same thing. I had this discussion with a few episodes ago with my friend David Brandstetter, and it's that thing. I've definitely gotten in that headspace where I'm like, writing a Marvel book is no longer the goal. I'm not ignorant to the obvious advantages that, like, if I was offered that gig, I would have to say yes. I would almost be obligated to say yes. Who would turn that down? But at the same time, it's like, I realized that that's not where my creative satisfaction is coming from. And I kind of had that epiphany where I was thinking, like, if I had could only work on one project, and it was, if Marvel came to me and was like, we want you to write Spider-Man for the rest of your life, or I could write issues of my book, The Amoral Stingray, for the rest of my life, and like make money off of that, because I'd be making money either way, because Marvel would be paying me to do Spider-Man, or I could make money continuously off Amoral Stingray. I would rather do Stingray. Like, I would much prefer doing that for myself. Yeah. And once I kind of had that epiphany moment where I was like, man, it's not that like my sights were in the wrong place, but it was more because, like, it's still good to, like I said, on a practical level, like, obviously if the job came along, you're going to open yourself up to a wider audience, which will then in turn allow you to do your own personal stuff, at a better rate. So but I'm talking about just like on an artistic level, like on a personal level, when you really think about it, it's like, you really do got to break down like what your true goals are. And that really does help you then, like in your own life, again, going back to that work-life balance of like, okay, my real goal is doing this, so I really need to just find a way to be satisfied in doing that.
Oh yeah. And like for some people, that maybe that is their goal.
For sure.
And that's great. Like, I'm not arguing one's better than the other.
Correct.
it's a personal thing where, that I see some artists like I follow where I'm like, they could draw anything and I would buy it. I'm just like blown away by their art, their writing, where I'm like, God, wouldn't this be cool? I was just talking to somebody about this. I can't even remember who the artist was, but I was like, imagine if he was making a Superman comic. I'm like it would just like blow people's minds. And they were like, well, I don't think that dude would ever make a Superman comic. And I'm like,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like, that's what I'm saying is like, you can be that person where it's like, you can make what you want to make and people would let them fantasize about what they think you should be doing. So,
yeah. No, everybody's got their own journey, their own creative journey that they take. So I do have another question, because like we had talked about you kind of deciding to get into comics 2015-ish, is when you is that like I don't know how old you are. Is that like a little later in life? You got a nice little silver fox thing going on here with your beard. I know you're flaunting that pretty.
I have gray hair too. It's just harder to see. I'm in my basement.
Well, I see, because like doing cons is like there's like two types of people that you see. You see the like teenager who's like, or the like the fresh out of art school type of person who's like, I'm gonna become the next insert name. Like I'm gonna be the next. And then there's just like the guys that are just there, and then there's like the older guys, and they've just been doing it for a long time, and they kind of like settled into their niche. And I think that you didn't really fit either category, when you started.
I don't really even now fit into one, which is, it makes for interesting comic cons. But I'm 34 now. So okay. I was almost 30 when I started. So
I had that was about the same age when I had my, like, a little bit before that, I had my quarter life crisis where I was like, you know what, I need to just be doing something, and comics is what I'm going to do. And so I said, because I kind of felt like that too, where I was coming in a weird way. It was like on one side, it was like all kids that were like getting into it. And then on the other side, it was all seasoned professionals. And I'm in the middle, like starting out, and I'm neither, and it feels weird in a way,
Yeah. And I came up like, I love comics, but like I grew up like loving like the 90s Image comics, which I didn't realize classified you as a certain type of person, like in the larger comic book reader crowd. And so like when I started doing shows and stuff, and like I would occasionally read, like I read Saga, like I'd read the big books by like, those superstar writers, artists, creative teams. But like I couldn't tell you the last like Justice League comic I've ever read.
Yeah.
Or like I picked up a few issues of Spider-Man when Ryan Ottley started drawing him, just because he's amazing. And I'm like, I just want to see what they look like, but like, I was never as interested in them. So I'm at a show and like somebody's talking to me about whatever Batman and Superman are doing, which I think they're great, but I'm like, sorry, man. I mean, the last time I read it, like Superman got split into like blue and red. I'm like, I don't even know what happened. Like, I was like, I couldn't tell you. I'm like, I thought that was amazing. And I'm like, I'm learning now that was trash. Like, so I'm still away from that. But
well, I do have that book on my shelf, the Grant Morrison Justice League. I'll stick up for that, even though I hated the idea at the time. I was like, I remember being a kid, because I've read comics my entire life, and I remember that was such a weird period in comics history too, because like Marvel was going through a bankruptcy and DC was just all over the place. They had just done their Death of Superman, and then they brought the Return of Superman. And I remember as a kid being like, this is the dumbest looking thing ever. He's not even wearing the Superman costume.
No.
But you know what? I've gone back and reread the books, and Grant Morrison writes good comics. I'm a fan of his.
Grant Morrison doesn't make bad comics.
Exactly.
I don't even think it's arguable. I mean, I'm sure many people say he's one of the best comic writers ever, but I love him. I think he's a genius.
For sure.
But yeah, it's interesting where a lot of the comics I follow now are just different. Like, I don't know. That's what I like about the medium, is that for every superhero story, there's 10, 15 weird esoteric occult ones, which you're like, why? What weird vacuum are we in? Like, these two exist together. We're like, it doesn't make sense. But I think it's interesting. And I love, that's my favorite thing about conventions, is that I make a habit of hitting every single little indie creator and like picking up their books. I'm like, I don't care. Like they can charge $7.50 or whatever they're, whatever weird price they always do. But I'm like, I'm just happy to see a different story being told. Like it's cool. I bought this I talk about it all the time. This guy makes this graphic novels about these like unicorns that live on a planet that like battle each other. Totally not for me. But
is that what do you remember what that book's called? I
can't remember. It's like
I think I saw him at I'm really embarrassed that I can't remember his name. I think I saw him at Heroes Con in
that's where I bought it at
2017. Okay. No, he was literally at the table next to me. That's why I remember it so clearly, which is why I'm extra embarrassed that I can't remember his name.
I can't either, but it's fine. It's a good book, but I thought it was a kid's book. And so I always try to buy my daughter stuff, and it's not. It's a very serious R-rated book, and like reading through it, I'm just like, dude, this guy like made this. Like that's so rad. Like,
I had the same thought where I was like, this is not for me, but it seems it's like really cool that I'm just glad that he's doing it, and I hope that it's for other people too. Well,
he seemed to be. I remember when I went to talk to him, he was doing well.
He was, as the guy who was at the table next to him, I can tell you he was doing just fine.
Yeah. And I was like, this is like, I like that guy can share that space with any other type of creation.
Yeah, totally. It does seem.
To look it up. We'll have to find that book so we can give that guy a plug. And
I know. Yeah, I need to get his name officially on. I need to just dub over all.
He's like, I feel like it was like Unicorn. I thought Unicorn was in the title, but it's like Unicorn War or
it was something like that.
Something weird like that.
Yeah. So somebody's gonna send him this podcast, being like, these two idiots can't remember you.
They don't know anything about the long fabled Unicorn Wars.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is interesting how I, as a comic book reader, I transitioned from being a regular Wednesday comic book shop, the Wednesday warrior, the guy I was at the comic shop every Wednesday buying stuff. And I think back, like as a kid, I bought stuff off the rack at the grocery store. I specifically remember the day when my mom took me to Kmart and I went to the comic book rack and there were no new comics. It was all like last week's stuff. And I was like, what is going on? This is weird. And then like the next week, the rack was gone. And I was like, this sucks. Like I can't get comics. And then thankfully we had a comic book store. It doesn't have the best reputation, so I won't say its name, but it exists and it's in my town. So I was able to get comics from somewhere. And, and then I, found other better stores and would go every week. And then I sort of like opened myself up to this world of indie comics, because the early 2000s was an incredible boom for the comic book industry. Like it actually makes me a little angry thinking back on like what a paradise it was for comics. And it really has changed a lot since then. And I was so like, we were in it. It's just that way. Like you have no idea this is as good as it's going to get. Now that's not actually true. That's not as good as it got, but it was definitely I don't mean to say like what we have now sucks. It's just different. And but there was definitely this great boom of indie comics, and even the stuff that Marvel and DC was doing at the time was really experimental and really great, because Marvel was trying to pull themselves out of bankruptcy. So they had Bill Jamis as the president or the publisher, and he was just like greenlighting all this weird stuff, just like we got to do something to get out there. And they brought in all these indie creators. It was a really wonderful creative time. But fortunately I found a good comic book shop that would order almost everything out of Diamond, like even like indie books. Like they prided themselves on being like the store that was like, because there's a lot of comic book stores out there that just get anything that's Marvel and DC, and even that only if it's like X-Men, Spider-Man, Justice League,
whatever sells.
And I don't necessarily fault them for that. I understand, business is business.
Yeah.
But I found a store that made part of their business like catering to this. Like they would just order everything out of Diamond. So I got really spoiled just like being able to just like browse all these indie comics that were coming out, and things have shifted so much since then. Like you can barely, and any indie creator can barely use Diamond if they can manage it. But and things have shifted so much since then. Now everything is like cutting out the middleman of the distributor, and it's all through crowdfunding and social media and webcomics, etc.
Well, and I mean, everyone's cutting out Diamond now too.
That's what I mean. Everybody's cutting out Diamond, and it's no longer Diamond cutting out the indies. Now it's Marvel and DC cutting out Diamond. So the poor Diamond, they're going to have to figure something out. Like they're going to either have. I mean, I have a little bit of like a cutthroat business attitude of like, this is your bed, now you got to lie in it, but hopefully, I mean, I want them to, whatever happens, I hope it's better for comics as a whole. And I assume it will be. It just because if it's not good for Diamond, it will be better for comics. And if it's better for comics and Diamond is still involved, then that means Diamond's going to figure themselves out. So
if the two biggest publishers are parting ways with them, that shows you that obviously it's not good for them. So they're probably making a more sound business.
Exactly. So I hope I'm confident that whatever happens, it will be better for the consumer and better for comics and creators and everything. It's just that awkward time of uncertainty that we're in now. It's like you never know what's going to go. But what I was getting at was like I've spent so many years kind of evolving with the times of like buying comics off the rack and then going to the comic book store and buying stuff. And for the last since 2012, I have almost exclusively got comics at comic book shows, at conventions that I would go to, because like I don't really, much to the chagrin of my local comic book store owner, I don't get out to the comic book store all the time. And with me doing a handful of shows a year, it was really easy to just like get a bunch of comics and the wide variety of stuff that's available is even larger than when I found the comic book shop that bought everything on a Diamond. It's incredible. So
it's on the same way that's like, Kickstarter and crowdsourcing. Like I imagine if that would have existed simultaneously at that time during the early 2000s, like, because we kind of had like that boon and then it died down and maybe it was a bit much. And now we've had another resurgence where I'm like, it seems like comics do extremely well on Kickstarter and
they do.
Indiegogo. Like, it seems like they do fairly well. So it's like really cool to like, I like seeing people finding alternative methods to get the books out. Like, my wife probably kills me because I get a lot of Kickstarter books, but
I do too. That's become like my new thing. It's like, now it's just, I just look for stuff on Kickstarter, and I can't back everything, obviously. You can't, and at the same time, this is something I've seen a lot of comic creators kind of gripe about or like struggle with is there is this sense, because the comic book community, there's a growing indie comic community. Like the comic book community is fractured in many ways. Like there's your Marvel and your DC guys. There's the classic alt comics, indie comics books, like people that are buying Fantagraphics and stuff like that. And then there's like your manga people, and then there's your web comic people. Because I do think that they're all distinct readers,
for sure.
And I do think
they overlap very often either.
No, they don't. That's what's so frustrating in a way. Because like I'm somebody, and I've always felt like this is kind of my personal problem, because I'm somebody who has never been like in a group. Like I've read a lot of superhero books. I love superhero comics, so it'd be really easy to put me in there. But like I love a lot of great Fantagraphics books. Like my all-time favorite, I love comic strips. The biggest influence on me is probably Calvin and Hobbes. I read that my entire life. And manga, like, we could talk about Akira and Ghost in the Shell. And, I
always tell people when they dog on it, there was always a negative connotation when I was growing up to people that liked manga or manga, however it's pronounced.
Yeah. However it's pronounced. I'm not
understood why, because I'm like, the people that read it, it's like 10-1 versus comic book readers. I'm like, there are more people that read manga than people who read comic books. And I'm like, we're in the weird part of the world where it's like been demonized. But I'm like, because I live by this flea market, so I got mangas all the time. And so I'm reading like all these great ones. And I remember thinking like, these make American comic books look like crap. And I'm like, blows my mind that there's like, how are they somehow inferior than us? But yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see. There's a new like sub audience of what I think is like the new indie comic fans, like the new indie comic creators, and a lot of them are they're just like all through crowdfunding, Indiegogo and Kickstarter.
Oh,
but
yeah, for sure.
There is also this it's also frustrating because it's really cynically you could look at it as just it's all a bunch of wannabes who are just supporting each other. Like it does.
Yeah.
This is something that I've struggled with, where it's like, I don't, when you talk about like wanting to find your audience, I don't want a bunch of people to support my Kickstarter for my book and buy my book just because they expect me to back theirs, and we're all just a big family of comic book creators, and we all support each other. Like I'm trying to reach actual readers,
Right.
And so there is that. I've seen a lot of people, and I mean, I'm not even trying to sound really mean about it, but like I've seen a lot of people be a lot meaner about it, where they're just like, where they're like, I've backed 100 Kickstarters in the last 2 years, and how is it that mine is failing? All you people out there, how are you not backing my Kickstarter? And I'm just like, it's like, you gotta.
It's not a currency.
It's not exactly. Yeah,
right.
You can't go into it with that thinking.
No, I've had people message me where. And I'm one of the rare people, if you blindly message me to check out your Kickstarter, I'm probably going to, not saying I'm going to back it, but like, that doesn't bother me. I know that's a point of contention with people.
Duly
like,
noted. I'll put that out there in the
headline
for this podcast. Message Kristofor Harris with your Kickstarter link. He will look at it.
Well, I'll tell people, and like, they're like, do you think you're going to back it? I'll say yes or no. I'll tell them. Like,
okay.
I'm like, hey man, this doesn't look like something I'm into, but I'm like, good luck, and like, so that doesn't bother me. But I have noticed that, like, because we ran 2 successful Kickstarters with Charlie, and we had a few people that were like, hey, I donated to your book, do you mind checking mine out? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm like, just because you donated to my book, that doesn't mean I care about yours. And I'm like, if you only donated just for me to donate to yours, like, keep your money.
Exactly.
Like I don't do that. Like we want people to read this. Like it's not just a 1-for-1 thing. But no, I've met a few of those people where I'm like,
yeah, they're out there, and it's frustrating. I get those unsolicited messages all the time of like, my new thing is on somebody I've never spoken to, somebody that I didn't even realize. Favorite. Somebody that I wasn't even realized I was friends with on, Facebook or what have you. And it's like, check it out. My new thing's on Facebook or Kickstarter, and I'm just like, I don't even know who you are, what this is. I don't like unsolicited messages.
I know I'm the weird one. Like I've never heard anyone else that doesn't mind, but like, I know.
I was about to say, I thought it was like number 1 on the do not do list is just like blind
bad form.
Yeah. Well, it's just I just don't care for the impersonalness of the whole thing.
It's like a spam message on your browser.
Exactly.
That's go away. Like, what is this? Like, yeah,
it's the equivalent of that. But that being said, I'm at the same time, like, it doesn't bother me, because like there's this weird thing. It's like, I know what you're doing. I understand it's the hustle, and on like a really base level, like if you got 3,000 people on your friends list and you blindly link your thing to all of them, and if you even only get 2 pledges off of doing that, I can't say it's not worth it. It's like, you don't know which ones are going to look at it, who's, so it's like, I get it. I don't like, I'm not mean to people. Like, I've seen a lot of people are like, if you do this to me, I'm going to unfriend you. I'm like, you're free to blindly message me, and I'm free to ignore you,
Exactly. I love when people post that. I'm like, just don't respond. Like,
exactly. Just don't respond.
You have any obligation to respond to people. Like, you can just be like, delete it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. This goes back to the whole, like, using social media. It's really easy for me to ignore social media. Like I say, for me, it's a struggle to come up with a reason to be on there and to constantly use it.
Same.
So, but yeah, it is interesting to see that developing community of people out there. And I never know, I've struggled with that myself because with the people like you said, like the one for one, it's like I'll back your project if you back mine. And I think that almost kind of comes from a Twitter mentality of like, follow me and I'll follow you. And then we'll both have huge followers, you know, and it's like, it doesn't work like that. Like, that's not, you know.
You should never take any kind of life advice or anything from Twitter.
Exactly.
Like, it blows my mind that it's a hard one for me to get into because it seems like it's where most creators are on, or most people in general.
It does.
I just don't understand where I'm like, I always thought Facebook was really fake feeling, but Twitter is like, it's beyond that. It's like a projection.
It's
of people that aren't real. And
right.
I don't want to get started about it, but Twitter makes me insane. Like,
no, I know. I have the same problem. I've actually been trying to use Twitter a little bit more lately because, well, this goes into the whole Kickstarter. Like, I'm trying to be a little better, a little more responsible as a creator because I don't want to go on into too much, but like I did the Kickstarter last year for my graphic novel, The Amoral Stingray. And that was a book that took 5 years to make because I was just funding it out of my own pocket. And for a variety of reasons, it took a long time to do. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know, previously on the one hand, I'm like, I don't want to start a Kickstarter and then have to play this tit for tat game where it's like, I'm going to shell out thousands of dollars on all these other indie creators so that they'll shell out thousands of dollars on mine. I'll keep my money and just fund my stuff. You know, and I say the same thing to other people. It's like, if you can't scrounge up $1,000, a couple thousand, like, let's be real here. You know, if you can't scrounge that up to like make your book, I don't, well, like, why do I feel obligated to put in for that? Like, I'm trying to fund my own stuff here, you know. But the flip side to that is, excuse me, the flip side to that, God dang. That might be the only edit I make in this podcast. The flip side to that is, I see the value if you got a handful of people that you can cover a couple of $1,000s, makes it a lot easier than having to put that up front, and also in a more timely manner, because there's the problem is like, I can spare a couple of $1,000s to make a book, but it's going to be made over the course of a year. Whereas if I can do a month-long Kickstarter and get that money, like, the artists I work with are great, and I know like Chris McChunkin, who was the artist who finished Amoral Stingray, he and I could do a monthly book like that. Like, I know we could. Like, he is a full-time professional artist. He doesn't have a day job even, and he just wants to make comic art, and I know we could do it. And so it's like, okay, I like kind of balance that of like what I'm trying to get at. Excuse me again. But I kind of went on a weird rant there, but just about Kickstarter and people. But it's just
it's frustrating. It's so transparent where it's like, and there's not even the kindness of like pretending. I think that's what bothers me, that whole pretense of that's actually what I was going to get at, though. So like circling back around to kind of what we were saying with Twitter, and this ties in with what you're saying with this whole relationship. It all feels fake, and it feels like this pretend thing. And I think everything on Twitter, it's the phrase you were looking for, or the word you're looking for, is it's all performative. It's all people acting. That's all it is.
It's all performative. And so then it becomes this weird thing of like, well, I don't want to do that. Like that to me sounds like another job. Like, I've got to be doing that to act like this a certain way, to try and bullhorn opinions out there that I don't even maybe care about, but I know it's the thing that has to be talked about right now. I don't play that game. I just want to make my books, and that's what I want to do, you know.
Well, what kills me is that this is what I struggle with Twitter the most, is it understood that it's performative? Are all users do they understand that?
I don't know, right?
Boomer, and I don't understand that.
Right.
Because like, to me, I'm like, I can see it's piercing to me. Most things I read where I'm like, this is just BS, but people seem to like it. And so I'm like, am I the odd one for just not having any attachment towards that? And I'm like, I don't really care though. And so like, it's this weird thing where I'm like, does everyone understand? Like, we all agree that this isn't real, but we still support it. I don't know. So that's where I'm like, it's kind of fascinating to just like people watch on there.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Well, like, I know I've met this person many times in real life. They are nothing like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but are they just a character of themselves on here? And so it's a performance, but I love it and hate it at the same time.
Exactly.
Like, it's not real, and people think it's so real, and I'm like, that's what kills me. Where I'm like,
yeah. Well, I do think that's what, not to be too much of an alarmist, but I do think that's the danger of Twitter, is there's this like extra layer of, I'm sorry, I got a cat on my lap who is, say hello to Domino, everybody.
Domino.
She's old and she can't really climb or jump on things anymore. So when she wants on my lap, she'll just sit at my feet and bite my leg. And then when she wants down, she'll just kind of stand up and start wiggling around. It makes it really uncomfortable for both of us.
Sounds like she's smart.
Yeah, maybe, but she's off now. But anyway, what I was saying about Twitter,
it's the devil.
It's the devil. Like, it's
but I'm like, if people like, I'm in the lane of life where if you're into something, if it doesn't hurt other people, go for it. I don't care. Like, I'm glad you find joy in that. Like, that's wonderful. And I'm like, but when I look at it, it just looks like 6 turds on fire. And there's a lot of turds and they're on fire, but that's as interesting to me.
So. Well, my concern, this is what I was getting at, like, not to sound like an alarmist, but my concern is that it is like a fake level of interaction that is, it's an extra layer of fake reality that I don't think a lot of people are really processing. Like, they don't really grok that what they're doing is it's not the same as having a conversation with somebody one-on-one. But it is interesting to watch, and it's interesting to see it develop. And it's also frustrating to kind of figure out how to crack the code. Like, what's the secret? And I think there is none. I don't think anybody knows. Everybody's just doing their thing. I
talk to people all the time. I'm like, if I really wanted to, I'm like, I'd honestly just spend the money to get a social media manager and just be like, you guys do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
Like, if I was in this situation where I could easily, I don't know how much those people cost. I'm sure it's thousands a month, but I'm like, if I could afford that, that's exactly what I would do. Like, I would just I would have some parameters, who is Kristofor, but like, have at it. Like,
and I always secretly wonder how many people are actually doing that, which that disappoints me, to think that there's this whole cottage industry of like ghostwriting tweets, like ghostwritten tweets, which I mean, I know there are on a certain level. Like,
it's real. So
it's like, it's not a secret for certain people. Like, obviously, like all like companies, like all the brand names, that they obviously have a social media manager who's like the person representing the company. But like, I do wonder how many people on a personal level, like that they're not upfront about having a social media manager. You know what I mean? Like, I'll bet it's more than one.
Oh yeah. It's at least more than one.
At least more than one. Yeah. Well, dude, I think we're going to wrap this up here. We've been going for a little over an hour now. I really appreciate you doing this. It was good. It's good to catch up. Good to talk.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, let's do this again next time you got something to put out. I definitely would like to talk more about like your work and the kind of stories you want to tell, and anything you got to promote. Like, I'm not promising you that there's a huge audience on this podcast just yet, but like, I want to be a tool for promotion. So if people need to promote stuff, this is a place to do it. Well, maybe not the place to do it, but it's a place to do it.
Right. I just wanted to chat with you and then dog on Twitter. So
yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I'm always up for dogging on Twitter. I think this is not the first time on this series of this podcast that dogging on Twitter has come up. So
it's inevitable.
It's inevitable. Yeah. All right, man. Well, we're going to end it there. Kristofor Harris, where can people find your work online? I know we've been talking a lot about Twitter, but I think that's also Instagram. You're also on Instagram. Is that correct?
Yeah. I post more on Instagram. I rarely, if you do follow me, I feel bad because like I'll be in like a block of like 5 days. I'll post every day in a row. Then I disappear for a week and I come back, but
because you're working.
That's usually what it is. But on Instagram, it's just my name, Kristofor Harris. I'm the only one on Instagram with the spelling of my name. And then my website, I have a little blog I post once a week, like 6 people a week read it, that's fine. But it's just KristoforTheArtist.com. So
all right. Well, I'll make sure to put the links in the description for this YouTube video. And yeah, man, thanks for doing this. Hopefully I'll see you again at a convention in the near future. It's still kind of up in the air in this area. Like, I don't know. I know Planet is kind of planning on an August show, but I'm skeptical.
I thought they pushed it back to next year.
Well,
they wrong.
They were originally going to be. I bought a table for the 2020 year, and then of course that got canceled like a week before. So I've been following it. They were originally going to do March. Well, I mean, it got pushed back so many times. It was March 2020, then it got pushed back to August 2020, then it got pushed back to March 2021, and now that has been pushed back to August 2020. But even that, I don't know. Good luck to them, I say. Yeah. But if they do the one in August 2020 or 2021, I probably won't be there. I'm probably just going to hold out to the 2022 con. Just because, it feels safer, and it just gives me more time to just finish my work and finish my book, so that when I do the con, I got more stuff to show for it.
Oh yeah. I agree.
All right, man. Well, hopefully I'll see you then. But
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Take care, man.
You too, bud.
Yep. Thanks. Hey, everybody. Aaron Walther here. Just reminding you that if you like this podcast, please subscribe to the channel. Also, head over to secondthoughtcomics.com to stay up to date on the various comics that I write. For a limited time, I'm giving away a free PDF of my latest graphic novel, The Amoral Stingray. All you have to do is sign up to the Second Thought Comics newsletter. Link is in the description. Thanks for reading.